All right, we can go ahead and start with Andy. Andy Parr has been the stormwater technician for the city of Rock Island for 10 years. Rock Island is his hometown and where he currently lives, and is very thankful for being able to give back to his community. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Geography with minors in Geology and GIS. He oversees a number of programs offered to the residents of Rock Island, including the Rain Gardens for Rock Island program and the Rock Island Drainage Assistance Program. He will discuss the details of these programs, the role of the property owner, and the different applications these programs have when dealing with stormwater. So if anyone has questions for Andy during the presentation, please type them out in the chat on the bottom of your screen, and I will relay those to him at the end. So thanks for supporting us today, Andy. Go ahead and share your screen whenever you're ready.
Sure. Hi there. Let me see. How's that?
Good.
You see my presentation there?
Yep, you're all good.
All right, perfect. Well, hi, everybody. Yeah, like Cassie was saying, I'm Andy over on the Illinois side here in Rock Island. We have 3 programs that we offer any resident that lives within the city limits of Rock Island that I'll be talking about today. And I guess, yeah, let's just get started then. Okay, so the 3 programs that we have are our Rock Island Drainage Assistance Program, which is stands for RIDAP, our Rain Gardens for Rock Island program, and we actually have a Sump Pump program. I'll finish up with the Sump Pump program, but I'll just kind of tell you right now, it's not very popular for a number of reasons, and we don't. So these were the budgets from 2020, and as you can see, I've only used it once since I've been working for the city in for about 10 years now. And there are different reasons for that, and I'll kind of try and hit on those at the end there. But we'll start out with the Drainage Assistance Program, which is pretty popular among our residents. Here's just kind of a page of our handout. I'll go over how it works and everything. But what we're trying to do with this program is to address damage on your property caused by somebody else's stormwater. And most of the time, those are creeks and ravines in the backyard, but not always. Just a quick little brief history. RIDAP program was created around 2003. They all were. I'll tell you that right now. The programs came into play when we had to start complying with EPA regulations, and they were just kind of a way what we used for our utility that got passed, our stormwater billing utility. So we created these 3 programs, kind of like an olive branch to the residents. We had a lot of resistance when the utility it was before my time, but from what I understand, we had a lot of resistance from residents and a lot of concern that we were charging them for rain, I guess, is for lack of better terms, but we all know that's not what we were charging for. It was for EPA compliance. So we developed a few programs to say, we hear that, you're concerned about it, but we will give back in some way. So these are what these programs are about. An ideal project would involve a neighborhood, stream stabilization project, for example. I've only seen a couple of those. Most of the time, they're individual property owners calling up and concerned about the creek. And my last bullet point here was, oftentimes I'll get a call from a resident. The creek behind my house is eroding. You need to come and fix your creek. As I think probably a lot of people here know that we don't own the creeks. We don't have any easements or right of way unless there's a utility across them. We rarely own anything that the residents are concerned about. So it's nice to be able to walk up to a resident and say, well, we don't own this property of yours, but we do have a program that we can help assist you with at addressing. The city contributes 75% of the total project costs up to $3,000 per property. So it's pretty popular. Here's just, I'm going to go to another slide real quick, but just kind of, this is a good example of something that I would typically see for a RIDAP program. I was not involved in this. This was from 2009, but it was just such a good picture. I wanted to throw this into the slide. Oftentimes we'll get a call from a resident. There's a pipe that you have, and I don't know if that pipe is private or public, but you can see the pipe up there. For argument's sake, let's just say that's our city pipe. You're putting all this water through my yard and it's causing erosion and I want it fixed. So this is where the program comes into play, and we'll get back to that. Eligibility, the big one is that the water has to be coming from somebody else's property. We're not going to fix your yard or your creek if all of your downspouts are running to it and creating your own problem. The projects must be somewhat permanent. I know with Mother Nature, nothing's really permanent, but we don't want to just have an application for somebody who wants to try something, and then next year, if it doesn't work, come back to us for another solution. We want this to be, a proper stabilization method, or some type of permanent solution to their problem. Obviously, we must accept the designs. Excuse me. We don't design, but we will kind of make sure that it makes sense. For liability reasons, we can't design the project. We're just the middleman between, the contractor and the homeowner, unless the homeowner wants to do it themselves. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But we don't do any design work. And then, the contribution is 25% from the property owner. This slide basically says, how does it work? You just have to get approved. I'll come out, I'll meet you, we'll talk about your project, we'll talk about possible solutions and ideas. I have no problem giving ideas out or putting people in contact with people who do this type of work, contractors who do this type of work. And then, once they get a submittal to us that makes sense and everything's signed, then you get the okay, formal approval. I'll go out and see that the project's completed and then reimburse you, hopefully within a week or two later. So as I mentioned before, if you can do the work yourself, but we're not going to pay you for labor. Otherwise, everybody's labor, depending on who you ask, is worth, $10 an hour up to $100 an hour. So if you want to do the work yourself, which some people do for small projects, we'll reimburse you on equipment rental and material cost. If a contractor performs the work and they, invoice you on if it's a proper contractor, we'll pay them for their labor. So yeah, back to this picture. It's a real good example of, something that you might see. You can tell he's got some terracing going on in his backyard. I don't know if that's a garden or whatnot, but he's losing some of those ties into the creek. It's a pretty vertical shear along the bank there, and something, we'd want to address. The first picture here is, he was approved for the program. He put down some armoring mat or material, and then some properly sized riprap on top of that. You can tell that the channel has been widened a little bit too. It's not just a vertical drop off. It's more of a V or a U shape on the bottom. And that helps tremendously. And so when you look at an after picture of what this gentleman or property owner was able to accomplish using our program, in my opinion, he turned kind of a liability into an asset. I think it's very simple, but very elegant. It's a good way to, address any erosion that he was causing, or that was being caused on his property from somebody else's stormwater. Couple more after pictures. So this is a typical RIDAP project. And you can tell he went all the way. The damage is already done to the land, so I don't know what he did with that fence eventually, but as you can see, it's stabilized, and it's a little more aesthetically pleasing from that. Here's another example of a RIDAP project. I know it might be. I'll explain what we're looking at here. You can see the White House just below, south of those tennis courts. The topography lines are all in yellow, and you can see the whole neighborhood was pretty much running towards this house during any rain event, whether it was light or heavy. They would have a pretty significant water in their backyard and pretty much rushing towards their house. Here's an after photo. I'll have pictures here coming up, but you can see the white C shape around their house. There was a lot of discussion about how they should address this water, whether to build more of a wall around it, which was kind of silly. I thought, you don't want a wall in your backyard, but they decided to dig a trench, run all of their downspouts. You can see a couple downspouts heading into this trench around their backyard, and you can see to the left of the picture, it's all just sloping directly towards their house. So during heavy rains, I don't want to say that the water was pounding against their house, but it was rushing in and going into those windows you can see on the right-hand side and just causing a headache. And another thing about this program, it's nice to have coming up to a home. When you buy property, you don't want to sit there and roll your eyes when somebody complains that there's water rushing downhill, but sometimes it's just kind of the case. And it is very nice to be able to offer assistance to people who might have overlooked that when purchasing a property. Sometimes, as we all know, it's just kind of the case. There's lots out there that just probably shouldn't have been developed. And I'm not saying this was one, but I've run into that many times. And you can see the trench was being dug. They put down some fabric as well. Here's just another angle of their downspouts being tied in. It's a very well dug trench. They've armored that as well, put in some grasses. There have been a few more plants added since then, which is good in my opinion. just to stabilize it. Just another angle here. You can kind of see what was happening was what happens now is that the water goes into that trench. The trench is nice and armored and it's deep, and then it kind of diverts the water along to both sides of the house. I like on the corners, they did put some plants for just maybe some additional stability. Here's the south side of the house, one more downspout being tied into this trench. And yeah, you can see on the bottom left, there's a black overflow. So if the trench was ever, during the really, really heavy stuff, there might, I'm sure there's some water still getting into the home, but this is designed to maybe alleviate during the more smaller or moderate rain events. And that black square box right there is an overflow. So water can kind of come up. Oops, I went back, sorry. Water can come out of that box and then, I apologize, head out towards the street where it should be in the first place. So in a much more reduced fashion, there shouldn't be any erosion from that or anything. It disperses, comes up, disperses along the rocks and trickles out towards the street, even during the heavy stuff. And this was done, I apologize, I don't have the date in place, but at least 7 years ago. And we've never heard back from the resident, and we believe everything, worked out pretty well. And here's just another area. I wanted to bring that back, kind of show you exactly what this resident had accomplished from the before and after pictures. So they're not all necessarily creek projects. We like to help anybody who's just having stormwater issues. But we'll go back, here's a major creek project that we had. A resident here had, it was a little bit unusual. The White House up in the corner there had well over an acre, maybe two, in between of this big parcel in the middle of a neighborhood, and he had this huge ravine flowing through it. And, you can see back on this slide, it was kind of a liability with little kids running around and playing as they do. He just wanted to do something to address it. And the program does cap out at $3,000. So this homeowner really took this to another level. We weren't a huge source of funds for him because he redid his whole creek. And as you can see from this, regraded it, added some weirs in the middle there with some logs that he had currently, opened up that channel, widened it up a little bit to get that V or U shape, and really reduce those edges. And as I was mentioning, this was a pretty big undertaking. It goes all the way past that pipe you can see in the distance. And although we only provided a very small fraction of what this total cost ended up being, he has gone on record to be very grateful just for the education that we were able to give him and the people we put him in touch with a really good contractor who does excellent work. And he said that information was just as valuable as the $3,000 that we gave him. So he had originally, from an engineering background, thought he was going to have to put, gabion baskets or some type of heavy duty structure along those walls to stop his land from eroding. And he's just tickled pink. He'll sit out, before during a heavy rain, he would go out with a little bit of anxiety and watch what was happening. But now he'll sit on his back porch and just watch the river go through his house. And he's loving it. So he's very appreciative of the information we were able to provide him. And that's one of the bigger projects we've ever done with RIDAP. But here's some next pictures. We do very small projects. This is, I'm standing on a city street that has no curb system. And during rain events, even light rain events, the water would kind of topple over into this low spot and rush into the garage. I don't have a before picture. This is one of the after pictures, but it was just a gravel driveway and the garage would be wet, and anything in the garage, he couldn't put anything on the floor because during any rain event or even snow melt, it would just kind of rush towards that door. And as you can see, we've used some RIDAP to put in a little bit more of a permeable driveway and then even a drain right at the end there to dry this up. And the homeowner was obviously very appreciative of this program. And again, just the information on how to fix it, because they probably wouldn't have known about these methods unless somebody had stepped in and helped them out. So it's a good program for sure. I've just got a few more photos of different variations of projects that we have. This was a gentleman who had a very wooded hillside in his backyard. Didn't have many neighbors or anything, but the hillside would always leach water. Days after it quit raining, the groundwater would find its way right about where his house was at and just start surfacing and causing wet spots in his yard and made it very unusable. So we let him, regrade his property a little bit, add a drain tile underneath. And in the very bottom right, I didn't mean to cut it off, but there is a green cap there, and you can see where that drain tile exits. It does collect surface water as well as groundwater. So it helped him dry up his property and make it more usable as well. Some noteworthy items, I've already said it, but we don't design anything. We put people in touch with contractors or whoever they want to come up with their own design. We will sign off on them, but we won't guarantee them. Like I mentioned before, the program is great for educating. A lot of our calls that I get are from references or people, hey, I saw somebody doing something in their backyard. What was that about, kind of a thing. The program itself, so we define stormwater as runoff resulting from precipitation, usually above ground. I make a point of this because a lot of times we'll get people calling in wanting to put in sump pumps on, using this program for groundwater. As I mentioned in the last slide, he had a combination of both. The groundwater was coming up right in his yard as well as the surface water. So I wasn't going to nitpick, and I thought it was an appropriate use of the program to address his problem. But for the most people that have a flat property and they just want to dry up their basement, this is not a program for that. We don't install sump pumps. We're trying to get stormwater and above ground runoff addressed. As I mentioned before, the damage to your property has to be caused by somebody else's stormwater, but you can define damage in all kinds of ways. And I've had some discussions with city managers and directors about if a person has a low spot in their yard that kills their grass, is that damage? And it's basically it's left up to me, but if there's any damage, even dead grass, we'll try and dry up your yard and make it more usable for you. So it's kind of a loose definition, but you can get some interesting calls and try and get out and see what kind of projects they want to get done. And yeah, it's kind of a gut decision on that. Most of 99% of them are very obvious, but sometimes we'll have if somebody's retaining walls falling in or something, we really have to see damage caused by stormwater. So we have about 75 projects completed today, maybe closer to 80 since 2003. And the last point is, Mother Nature, we will, as I mentioned, we don't guarantee any of these projects. We're just the middleman providing funding for you. But I tell people, even if you have the best contractor in the world and you over-engineer it, Mother Nature could just come in the next day and just wipe it all, undo everything. We have to kind of be aware of that when addressing anything stormwater related. So I like to just give residents and people a heads up on that. If you bought a property on a creek, you might have to, no matter all the armoring in the world, might still move that creek one day. So, Mother Nature is going to do its thing. So you just have to be aware of that. So we've had good luck with that program. Am I stopping at all, Cassie, for any questions, or am I just going?
You can keep going. We've still got some time.
Okay.
Got you till 11.
Okay. 11:35?
Yeah.
All right. All right, perfect. Well, the next program is our Rock Island Rain Garden program. Very simple. I'm assuming most people here, if you're not familiar with a rain garden, it's essentially a native plant sponge that you put in your yard. We've used these to dry up yards and address stormwater issues as well. They improve the quality of the groundwater and well, stormwater that becomes groundwater. So again, around 2003 up to date, or to this day, we have about just under 200 rain gardens installed throughout the city. The payment's a little bit different on this one. We reimburse based on the size of the garden and how much water it will hold. An easy way to explain this would be if you have a hill in your backyard and you want to put a rain garden at the top of your hill, we're not going to reimburse you that much because you're not collecting that much water. We want to see these in low spots where a lot of water will travel. And so that's been a little bit of a challenge to explain, but we reimburse $4 a square foot based on how much water you can collect. And we have this engineering spreadsheet that I did not create that we use to determine, I'll calculate roof surface area and other topography issues and see how much water is going in there to try and give you your max reimbursement. Got a couple good examples of this. The guy in the White House, this is not his garden. They're all little plugs. Most of my pictures aren't that impressive because these are just the after pictures. We don't usually follow up on them too much, but the neighbor uphill here was obviously aware that every time it rained, the neighbor down in the White House was just getting, and you can kind of see how dirty his patio back there is. So he installed a rain garden to try and hold back a little bit of water during those light to moderate events. And there's all kinds of plugs and stuff in there. It's done very well since then, but the picture doesn't do it justice. But what I like about this picture is that it's showing you it is a slope or it is a depression, excuse me, that is collecting water and holding it there to alleviate downstream neighbors' stormwater issues. It's worked out real well. This is a rain garden in somebody's backyard. On the left and right, and even actually behind it, everything slopes into this guy's backyard. There's no pipes, there's no utility back there to try and get rid of these, the stormwater during the heavy stuff. So he would have a lake in his backyard essentially. And so he had decided to apply for the program, and he's had really good luck with that. Since then, this picture, it's really taken off and done very well. And I like this method too. This house here just wanted to get rid of, they didn't want to use a lawnmower anymore. So you can see all the red downspouts coming from their house. They just wanted to put all their water into here and get the biggest reimbursement they could to remove the grass, the turf grass from the yard. So it's done very, it's many different applications. I'll get calls from people trying to fix a problem, but I'll also get calls from people trying to create pollinator habitat or just simply get rid of their turf grass. And I like both calls. So I'm happy to help with whatever we can for sure. Here's a situation where the house, the gray house, you can see that, and the white garage to the right of that, that's cut off in the picture. We're having standing water in the backyard every time it rained. So both of them called the city together, and together they've kind of put this rain garden in right down their property line to address standing water. The water should be flowing directly towards those patio chairs and past that fence, but this does a really great job of just slowing that down and drying up the area. So they've had very good success with that. This was actually in the paper on August 11th. I don't know if anybody saw this, but this gentleman here, his address is on the right there, 1024 22nd Street. Mark Tanner, I've known for a couple years now. He started off putting one rain garden in his backyard. The one he's standing at right there was the first garden he put in. And then the next year he called back, said, it's working great. I love the time it takes me to mow my yard. I want to keep going. And absolutely. So there's a big write-up about him because he has 4 rain gardens in his yard. He has it's a relatively small piece of property actually too. It's just what you would think of a residential neighborhood. You can see all the houses behind him. He's a good point here because you can do, whereas RIDAP is usually a one-time thing. We want to fix a problem once and not come back. Rain gardens are just dependent on how much water they're collecting. So he has a house and all 4 downspouts are going in 4 different directions. So absolutely, you could capture 1 downspout one year, and then each year, or even, next year you could catch all 3. You could absolutely do that. The max is still $3,000 per year. So if you wanted to get the biggest bang for your buck and you had the patience to do 1 at a time, you would be able to max that out pretty quick. Or I'm not pretty quick, but pretty well each year. So yeah, if you ever see him, he's a very nice guy, and that's why I threw the address up there. If you wanted to see what a really, I don't want to say small property, but a very modest property can do with 4 giant rain gardens, it's just very impressive, and it was impressive enough to write up an article about him. So that'd be a good source for anybody to just drive by. I ask you to be polite and and do all that, but he's more than happy to show off his yard, and it is beautiful. So. The last program that we have is the one that I don't see a whole lot. It is still active, so I did want to promote it and talk about it. It's the Sump Pump Discharge Program. The thought behind this program is, as you can see on the pamphlet here, is to remove sump pump discharge from right-of-ways or sidewalks that would create a hazard. And otherwise, you can see on the bottom left, that's a situation that we'd want to avoid, is all the ice covering the sidewalks and driveways. Why, this program, let me see here. Yeah, so I'll also create on TLS3. We will contribute 75% up to 500. The other 2 programs you max out at 3,000. This one's 500. I think one of the reasons that sump pumps are usually relatively easy to fix. If I call up a homeowner and say, your sump pump is making a mess, can we please address it? Usually it's okay, I'll just cut it back and I'll let it drain on the grass, and that's a great way to do it. I usually, like I said, just don't hear back from them, and even if I tell them we have a program, if you want, we can, help you pay for this, but they don't want to pay even the 25%. Most of them just say, no, I'll reroute it, or I'll do something to address my sump pump. And usually don't hear back. The one time I did use this program in my 10 years here was it was a gentleman who had an underground spring under his house, and that's very common. If you know Rock Island, up by the the Sauckie Golf Course area, anywhere in that area, there are a lot of underground springs. So this gentleman wanted to use this program to to do that and tie all of his sump pumps into behind a catch basin that was in our street. And we thought that was a great way to do it. And it's permanently resolved that issue completely. Here's an example, excuse me, a photo of 3 different downspouts. I'm so sorry, sump pumps. And I know you probably can't see them all the way down there, but this would flow 24/7 all year round until we dug a trench behind them and tied them all into the back of a catch basin. So ideally with that program, that wasn't too expensive, and especially if everybody gets $500 reimbursement and they all pitch in on the boring costs, it's typically not that big of an endeavor for them, or it's doable for the pocketbook, especially if they have a year to prepare for it. So yeah, lots of different ways we're addressing stormwater and trying to improve the quality. I know I kind of maybe talked a little fast. I'm sorry about that. I have my information right here. I'm happy to answer any questions, or please reach out for anything.
Okay, thanks, Andy. If anyone has questions for Andy, please type them in the chat on the bottom of your Zoom screen. I did have a couple questions. Adriana asked if RIDAP applies to anything happening at Black Hawk State Park.
No, typically that would be, because it's a state-run park. I mean, if they approached us and asked for funds, maybe, but usually because that's a state-run park, they usually manage their own properties. From what I understand, I've never heard from them, or they've never inquired about it.
Okay. Also, do the riprap rocks slow or redirect the stormwater? Are native grassy waterways covered as a solution under RIDAP? What other bank stabilization design solutions have been implemented aside from riprap?
Oh, sure. Well, riprap is probably the most common, but we have seen some grasses, some native grasses that are just more of a swale at that point. I'm trying to think. We do have there are some sheets that you can kind of nail into the ground on a wall, like on a vertical. They're mostly for highway usage on on overpasses and stuff. I've seen one application of that, and it was just a couple sheets, just to kind of stabilize something up. But most of the time it's riprap. The thing I would say about that is just, even if you're not sure, I would oversize it just a little bit, because you'd be surprised, even on the little creeks, they can wash away during a heavy rain. They can wash away concrete benches and patio furniture and stuff, and I've seen it. So we always just tell people riprap is fine. Have some type of material underneath it, so the silt isn't getting out of it too. But yeah, I'm not opposed to anything. If they wanted to put down some netting or some grass swales or anything, we would just have to kind of see a plan of it. But typically, and maybe unfortunately, it's mostly riprap. I've tried to go out of my way and talk to residents who live along creeks to just let their creek grow. Don't mow right up to the edges of your creek bank. Get a little barrier, a buffer between your creek and your yard to let that grass grow, and it'll hold the creek in way better and way cheaper than a bunch of rock will. So hopefully that answers.
Okay, thank you. We will wait a couple seconds to see if anyone else has a question.
Sure. And I'm happy to talk to anybody if they have any questions about any of this stuff. So. Sorry, I might have clicked off my presentation there. Is my information back up?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions come through to the chat. So Andy, thank you so much for your presentation. And we have one more speaker, and then after that, I will share a little bit about Partners of Scott County Watersheds. So